Have you ever noticed that no matter how hard you try, there always seems to be some invisible force trying to bring you down? Strange things start to happen. Doors close without explanation. People you've helped turn against you. And suddenly, everything around you seems like a giant trap set to destroy you. This isn't a coincidence, it's a spiritual battle. And if you're going through this, you need to understand something today. God has already left a powerful weapon to undo these traps and expose every evil plan against your life. It's not a charm, it's not a human chain, it's not a trick. It's the very word of God put into practice through prayer. And there's a specific psalm that acts as a true shield, Psalm 35. This psalm isn't just a beautiful text from the Bible. It's a battle cry, a direct plea to God to fight against those who fight against you, so that every ambush set against your life can be undone. As you watch this video, you'll discover why this psalm is so powerful, how to use it practically in your daily life, and how it can completely turn around situations that currently seem hopeless. You'll understand that you no longer need to live under persecution, injustice, or fear. There's a spiritual key that breaks every curse and prevents evil plans from coming to fruition. And when you put this into action, you'll notice that things will begin to change around you so clearly that even others will notice. Want to know how this happens? Then stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to show you could be the turning point you've been waiting for. Now you understand that Psalm 35 is a real weapon for undoing traps and completely changing seemingly hopeless situations. This knowledge shouldn't be confined to you, because the more people you reach, the more lives you'll transform. What you've just received has the power to change your life and open new paths. And supporting this channel is your way of giving back for the impact this message has already begun to have on you. So strengthen this chain of faith and victory. Subscribe to the channel and like this video so this message will reach many more people who need the same transformation you're experiencing now. Understand something important. When we talk about spiritual life, we're not just talking about pretty prayers or comforting phrases. We're talking about real warfare. And perhaps you've already experienced this firsthand. You know those days when everything seems to be going wrong all at once. You try, you strive, but one door closes, then another, and suddenly even the people who should be by your side turn against you. It's as if there's an invisible force setting traps, laying snares to see you fall. And it's no exaggeration. This is the reality of spiritual warfare. The Bible itself shows that there are forces plotting against us, but it also reveals something even greater. God has not left us unarmed. He has given us powerful weapons to face every situation, and one of them is prayer. I'm not talking about just any prayer, but prayer grounded in the Word. When you pray based on the Word, you stop just saying what you feel and begin declaring what God has already established. It's like leaving a fight empty-handed and suddenly holding a sharp sword that cuts through any attack. And this is where Psalm 35 comes in with incredible force. This psalm is a call for God to fight in our place, for Him to undo evil plans and expose hidden enemies. When you begin to understand this, you realize you no longer need to live as an easy target for injustice. And here's the thing, we often get used to thinking that bad things are just fate, bad luck, or coincidence. But it's not a coincidence when everything seems to conspire against you. It's spiritual. And this is where Psalm 35 becomes key, because it shows that you can place this battle in God's hands and let Him dismantle the traps set to harm you. Now think about it. How many times have you tried to solve things on your own? You've defended yourself, argued, and worn yourself out with people who invented lies or plotted against you. In the end, not only were you exhausted, but you realized that nothing had really changed because the root of the problem wasn't in what was visible but in what was invisible. It's like trying to put out smoke without putting out the fire. And that's exactly what Psalm 35 does. It goes to the root, it calls God to the fight, and when God steps in, no trap, no persecutor, no injustice can resist. This psalm is direct. It's a plea for God to confront those who persecute you, to turn the tables and bring justice where there seems to be no way out. And I know you might be thinking, but does it really work? Could it just be another prayer I'm going to say and nothing will happen? This doubt is normal. Everyone has thought this at some point. But pay attention, because there's a huge difference here. When you pray based on this psalm, you're not simply speaking, you're aligning your voice with God's voice. It's as if each word were a spiritual sentence, an order in the divine court, and against this, no defense can resist. That's why so many people who have applied this prayer have seen situations turn around in impressive ways. People who were being unjustly persecuted suddenly saw the truth come to light. Doors that were closed because of envy or gossip opened again. The spiritual weight that seemed to suffocate was broken. This isn't theory, it's practice. And let me tell you something, the power of this psalm isn't just in the words themselves, but in the attitude of the one praying. When you pray Psalm 35 with faith, you're declaring that you no longer accept living under spiritual persecution. You're handing over the reins of the battle to the one who can truly win. And I want you to think about something right now. What's the biggest trap you feel you're facing today? It could be an injustice at work. It could be someone who's always trying to pull the rug out from under you. It could even be an emotional burden you don't understand where it comes from. To generate even more connection here, I want you to write the word in the comments, deliverance, because that is exactly what this psalm releases into the lives of those who believe. Deliverance from every trap. This commentary is not just for engagement. It is for you to publicly declare that you believe God will act. And here comes the most powerful part. When you surrender this fight to God, it doesn't mean you'll stand still, it means you'll fight the right way. You stop wasting energy defending yourself against accusations and start using prayer as a shield. This completely changes the way you face problems, because instead of living on the defensive, you start living on the offensive, protected and confident. And that's where true transformation comes in, because you realize you no longer need to be trapped in fear of what will be plotted against you. God is already ahead, dismantling those plans. Now, before we move on, remember this. Understanding that spiritual forces exist and that God-given weapons exist to combat them is only the first step. Because the big question is, how can we put this into practice every day consistently so that this protection isn't just momentary, but part of our entire life? That's exactly where we'll get to in the next point, because prayer based on the Word isn't just an emergency resource, but a lifestyle that changes everything. Have you ever noticed that often things start to go wrong in such strange ways that they almost seem set? It's no exaggeration to say that there are spiritual traps that arise to try to bring down people with purpose. These traps don't appear out of nowhere, they're planned. It's as if the enemy looks at your life and says, if I can't stop this person by force, I'll try to trap them in situations that leave them tired, confused, and without the strength to continue. And that's when the silent persecution begins, the injustices that have no explanation, the obstacles that arise where you least expect them. Have you ever felt this? It seems like everything is going well, and then, out of nowhere, a problem arises that completely changes the course of things. These traps can manifest in many ways. Sometimes it's a friendship that turns out to be toxic and begins to drag you down. Other times it's at work, when someone plots behind your back and does everything they can to see you fall. It can even be within your own family, when harsh words and conflicts arise for no apparent reason, creating divisions and wounds. The problem is that often we only look at the surface and think, oh, it's just bad luck, just a bad phase. But when this happens again, when the feeling of being persecuted becomes constant, it's because something much bigger is going on. The Bible calls these traps, and not for nothing. A trap is something you don't see, a plan set up so that when you least expect it, you fall into it. Now think about it. How many times have you found yourself asking yourself, why me? Or, what did I do to deserve this? This is precisely the strategy of the spiritual trap. It doesn't just attack your circumstances, it attacks your mind, trying to make you believe you're a victim of chance or even that God has forgotten you. But the truth is different. You're not alone in this struggle. Recognizing that spiritual traps exist isn't a reason to fear, it's a reason to be vigilant. It's about opening your eyes and understanding that an enemy is plotting, but that God has already left the right weapons to prevent you from falling into these traps. This is precisely where Psalm 35 takes on even more meaning, because it's not just any prayer, it's a direct declaration against those who conspire against you. It's as if you're saying, Lord, I see plans being made in the shadows, but I won't fall for them because you're ahead, undoing every snare, every trap, every ambush. This is powerful because it places your life under a level of protection that goes beyond what you can see. And this leads me to a question. Have you ever been in a situation where you realized something was set to harm you, but in the end it didn't work out? Well, often that "it didn't work out" was precisely God acting behind the scenes, dismantling the plan before it could reach you. And look, I'll be honest with you. Many people lose spiritual battles simply because they don't believe they exist. It's like someone walking through a minefield with their eyes closed. They might even take a few steps without a problem, but at some point they'll step in the wrong place. Now, when you understand the traps and start walking with alertness, guided by prayer and the Word, your chances of falling into them decrease drastically. This doesn't mean the attacks will stop, but it does mean you'll be prepared, protected, and aware that God is already fighting alongside you. And I want you to join me on this point. Write the word here in the comments: protection. This is more than a gesture of commitment. It's an act of faith. When you write this, you're declaring that you believe God will protect your life from every trap, visible or invisible. It's a way to transform this video into a space of agreement, because the more people release this word, the more faith is released as well. Now, imagine the following scenario. Someone is plotting against you, making hidden plans, and just when everything seems ready to go wrong, God steps in and dismantles every detail. The trap set for you ends up backfiring on the one who created it. This is exactly what Psalm 35 reveals, and this is the spiritual reality we need to understand. But there's an even deeper question. How can we transform this awareness into daily practice so that you not only escape one trap or another, but also live constantly protected against hidden works? This is where the turning point begins, and that's what we'll discuss in the next section. You've probably noticed that many times we pray and nothing seems to happen, as if our words hit the ceiling and bounce back. This is one of the biggest reasons for spiritual frustration. People praying, asking, crying out, but seeing no practical results. But there's a huge difference between praying based solely on what you feel and praying based on what's written in God's Word. This difference is what separates a prayer that merely vents from a prayer that truly transforms reality. When you understand this, your approach to God changes completely. Because praying based on the Word isn't just talking, it's declaring what God already guarantees. It's bringing to light promises that cannot fail. Think about it. When you face injustice, what do you usually do? You complain. You vent to someone. Sometimes you cry alone in your room. All of this may bring momentary relief, but it doesn't change the situation. Now, when you take Psalm 35 and place those words before God, you are presenting your case in the heavenly court. It's like a lawyer presenting incontrovertible evidence before the judge. There is no argument against the word. That's why this psalm is so powerful, because it places you in the position of someone who doesn't plead like a defeated person, but who claims God's protection and justice like a child who knows they have spiritual rights. And, let me tell you, this isn't just fancy theory to cheer people up, it's practical. How many times have you felt powerless in the face of situations beyond your control? People making up stories about you, doors that were unfairly closed, persecution that had no explanation. When you pray the word, you're calling God to act where you can't. It's as if you're saying, "Lord, I don't have the strength, but your word already says that you fight against those who fight against me. So now it's your turn to act." This is prayer based on the word, and it carries weight because it's not just your voice, but the voice of God echoing through your mouth. And it's also important to understand that prayer based on the word changes you from within. It not only reaches the spiritual realm, but also strengthens your faith, because each time you pray declaring Scripture, your mind is reminded that God remains in control. This is why people who live a consistent prayer life always seem more steadfast in the face of crises. They are not untouchable, but they have a weapon that sustains them. And this brings us to an important detail. When you pray the word, you begin to see situations differently. What once seemed impossible to overcome now becomes just another opportunity to see God's hand at work. Perhaps you're wondering, but can I really pray like this? Will it work for me? The answer is clear. Yes, it does. It doesn't matter if you've been walking in faith for years or if you're just starting out. The power isn't in your eloquence. It's in the word you proclaim. When you repeat with faith what's already written, it's as if you're signing a document that God Himself has already stamped. This is irrefutable. And here, I want you to do something to activate this faith. Write the word in the comments. Justice, because this is what prayer based on the word releases into your life. Justice against all persecution, all slander, and every evil plan. By writing, you are already agreeing with this truth and declaring that you no longer accept living under injustice. Now, for this to become a reality, there's one fundamental point: perseverance. There's no point in praying once and expecting everything to change immediately. Prayer based on the Word is a practice, a lifestyle. It's like someone who plants a seed and continues watering it every day, even before they see the sprout. Those who learn to persevere understand that the Word never returns empty. It always accomplishes what it was sent to do. And when you put this into action, you begin to experience victories that previously seemed impossible. But here arises another question that many people overlook. How can we transform this prayer into something continuous without giving up halfway? Because the truth is that praying based on the Word requires discipline, and this discipline is what sustains you when spiritual battles become more intense. And that's exactly what we'll delve into in the next section, because understanding the importance of perseverance is what separates those who experience powerful answers from those who give up midway. Many people don't understand that, as a Christian, you're not an ordinary person in the spiritual realm. Most people view faith merely as emotional support, something to bring comfort in times of pain. But the truth is that faith in Jesus Christ places you in a position of authority. And authority isn't just a pretty concept, it's real. It's like a soldier who receives from his commander not only orders, but also weapons and the right to use them in battle. And here's the thing: when you surrender your life to Christ, you receive this spiritual right to stand up against everything that tries to destroy you. Unfortunately, however, many people live as if they don't have this authority. They walk around with their heads down like victims, accepting all kinds of persecution, injustice, and spiritual attacks as if they were inevitable. But that's not how it should be. Jesus made it clear that he gave his children the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions, to face evil forces, and emerge victorious. This isn't a distant promise. It's a reality you can experience daily. The problem is that the enemy knows this and does everything he can to prevent you from discovering or using this authority. Because when you understand who you are in Christ, you stop running from the problem and begin to face it with the certainty that you already have victory. Now think about how many situations you've let pass because you believed there was nothing you could do. An unfair boss who humiliated you, a person who invented lies against you, a family problem that left you speechless. You accepted it because you thought there was no way out. But when you begin to pray the Word with authority, your posture changes. You don't pray as someone begging for mercy. You pray as a child speaking directly to the Father, knowing that He stands up to defend you. It's at this point that prayer ceases to be just a request and becomes a declaration of war. And this is what Psalm 35 brings so clearly. It places you in this position of calling on God Himself to fight against those who fight against you. And don't think that spiritual authority means arrogance. It's not walking around with your chest puffed out, thinking you're better than others. Spiritual authority is identity awareness. It's knowing that because of Jesus, you have the right to say enough to the situations that try to imprison you. It's having the courage to stand up and declare that you no longer accept living under oppression. This doesn't come from your own strength, but from the strength you receive from God. Yonggi Cho always taught something very powerful about this. A life of prayer isn't just about asking, it's about using your faith in a practical way, with the conviction that you already have the authority to change your circumstances. And when you apply this principle, you begin to see miracles happening. And look, this is precisely where many people stumble. They even believe in God. They even know the Bible, but they don't use that authority. They live as if they were spiritual beggars, waiting for a crumb to fall from the sky. But God didn't call you to be a beggar, He called you to be a son. And a son doesn't ask as someone who begs. A son asks as someone who knows they have a right. This is the big turning point that changes everything. And to generate even more impact here, I want you to write the word in the comments: authority. Because by writing this, you are already affirming, I believe I have authority in Christ to face any spiritual trap. This is not just engagement. It is a public declaration of faith. And you can be sure that by writing this word, something already begins to move within you. And you know what's most impressive? When you begin to exercise your spiritual authority, it's not just your life. That changes. The people around you notice it too. They begin to notice that you no longer react as before, that you don't let anything shake you. The atmosphere changes. And this is powerful because it shows that you're not just resisting, you're influencing. You carry light, you carry presence, and this presence disturbs everything that opposes God. Now, let me leave you with a thought that will open the door to what comes next. Having spiritual authority is the first step, but there's no point in having authority if you don't know how to use it consistently, transforming this stance into a daily weapon. This is where Psalm 35 ceases to be just a text read and becomes a practice of spiritual warfare. And that's exactly what we'll discuss in the next section, because understanding the psalm as a spiritual weapon will open your eyes to an even greater level of victory. Now we come to the heart of what we've been talking about so far, Psalm 35. This isn't just another psalm to be read as a religious routine or as part of a quick devotional. This psalm is a true spiritual weapon, a clear and direct request for God to enter the battle and fight against those who plot against you. When you read this text carefully, you realize that it's not sweet, it's not neutral. It's a battle cry. It's the prayer of someone who understands that they can't win alone, but who also understands that they can surrender control of the fight to the God who never loses. And that's the key. Using. Psalm 35 isn't just reciting words, it's activating a spiritual tool that God has already left to protect you and give you victory. Think about it. How many times have you felt trapped, as if there was no way out? That's exactly the feeling the author of Psalm 35 had when he wrote it. He was being wronged, persecuted, slandered. People were plotting against him for no reason. Doesn't that sound like your life sometimes? You strive, you work, you're faithful, and suddenly someone starts bad-mouthing you, making up things that aren't true, trying to pull the rug out from under you. It's in these moments that this psalm becomes so timely, because it puts into words what you feel, but it also delivers the answer. It's not you who will take revenge. It's God who will fight for you. The most powerful thing is that Psalm 35 shows that God not only defends you, but completely dismantles the enemy's strategies. It's as if he disarms every trap set against you, and in many cases, turns those same traps against those who set them. This is divine justice. It's when you understand that you no longer need to spend energy trying to prove who you are or defend yourself against every accusation. You simply pray this psalm, place the situation in God's hands, and rest in the knowledge that He is already at work. And it's amazing how this brings peace, because you realize you no longer have to carry this burden alone. And here's an important detail. This psalm shouldn't be read as a mechanical repetition, but as a declaration of faith. Each word needs to be absorbed, understood, and declared with conviction. When you read, for example, "Contend, O Lord, with those who contend with me. Fight against those who fight against me," you are asking for direct intervention from heaven in your life. You are calling upon the greatest warrior of all to fight for you. This is far greater than any human effort, because when God enters the scene, even the most elaborate evil plans fall apart. Now let me be even clearer. Praying Psalm 35 doesn't mean wishing harm on anyone. It means surrendering justice to God and letting Him act His way. Because often we think about taking matters into our own hands, but we end up creating even more confusion. When you surrender to the Lord, He acts with perfect wisdom, revealing the truth, exposing lies, and ensuring that the righteous are not defeated. This frees you from the desire for revenge and places you in the position of someone who trusts. And to further cement this idea within you, I want you to write the word in the comments "victory," because that's exactly what Psalm 35 releases to those who pray with faith. Victory over traps, victory over injustice, victory over everything planned against your life. When you write this word, you're activating within yourself the awareness that it's not you who will fall, but rather the enemy's plan, which has already been undone. And you know what's most incredible? As you begin to pray this psalm, you notice changes not only externally but internally as well. The fear that once paralyzed you begins to lose its power, the anxiety that robbed you of sleep disappears, and you begin to trust God more deeply. It's as if a weight has been lifted from your shoulders, because you understand that the fight is no longer yours, and this internal change is what sustains you to remain steadfast, even when you don't yet see the answer from the outside. But there's something here that can't be ignored. There's no point in understanding the power of this psalm if you don't consistently put it into practice. It's not about praying it once and then forgetting about it. It's about making this kind of prayer a part of your life. That's where the next point comes in, because it's perseverance that turns this knowledge into real results. Without perseverance, even the most powerful weapon can end up forgotten in a drawer. And that's exactly what we'll talk about next. One of the biggest traps people fall into in their spiritual life is believing that all it takes is praying once and that's it, as if they were pressing a magic button and the answer would fall from the sky immediately. And when that doesn't happen, what do many people do? They give up. They think God didn't hear them, that the prayer didn't work, or even that they don't have enough faith. But let me tell you something. Prayer isn't a quick fix. It's a lifestyle. Perseverance is what separates those who see miracles happening from those who remain stuck in frustration. Because prayer based on the Word, as we saw in Psalm 35, is powerful, but it needs to be used continually. There's no point in drawing a powerful weapon and then putting it away in a drawer. You need to practice day after day until victory manifests. Think of something simple. A farmer doesn't plant today and expect to harvest tomorrow. He plants, waters, tends, waits for the right time. Prayer is exactly that. Every time you pray, it's like watering the seed of faith. And even if you don't see anything happening yet, something is already moving in the invisible. God is working behind the scenes, dismantling traps, changing hearts, aligning situations. But often we give up too soon, just when we were about to see the results. That's why perseverance is so important. And I know you've probably felt that feeling of praying and nothing seems to change. It's frustrating, I know, but that's when faith is truly tested. That's when you have to decide whether to believe in the circumstances or in what God has already promised. Yonggi Cho always said this: prayer is like breathing. You can't stop. If you stop, your spiritual life weakens and problems take over again. But when you keep going, even without seeing anything yet, you're showing God that you trust Him above all else. And here's a very practical point. Perseverance doesn't mean repeating the words mechanically. It means insisting with faith, declaring that victory is already certain. It's about standing your ground. For example, when you pray Psalm 35, nothing may seem to happen on the first day. On the second day, you might not see any difference either. But over time, you'll notice that the spiritual weight begins to fall, that doors begin to open, that the truth begins to emerge. It's like someone breaking down a wall with a hammer. Perhaps the first blow doesn't do anything, but each blow weakens the structure, until suddenly, the wall crumbles all at once. This is exactly what happens with persevering prayer. Every time you pray, you are striking at the spiritual structure that tries to rise up against you. And there comes a time when this structure can no longer hold and crumbles. That's when you see the miracle. Now tell me, how many times have you given up before seeing the wall fall? How many times have you abandoned prayer because you thought it wasn't working? That's precisely when the enemy tries to act, making you believe it's useless to continue. But the truth is that many victories are lost, not because God didn't want to answer, but because the person stopped persevering. And to fix this in your heart once and for all, I want you to write the word here in the comments, persevere. Because declaring this publicly is like making a commitment to yourself and to God. You will no longer give up easily. You will continue until you see complete victory. Writing these words is like a milestone, a sign that from this day forward you understand that prayer is not about speed. It is about constancy. And look, let me remind you of something. Every time you pray with perseverance, it's not just the spiritual world that moves. You are also transformed. Your faith grows, your patience matures, your trust in God increases. And this inner change is as important as the answer you're waiting for, because it prepares you to maintain the victory after it arrives. And here's the detail that paves the way. For the next point, perseverance in prayer not only brings answers, but also generates testimonies. And that's precisely what we'll explore next, because nothing strengthens faith more than seeing and hearing real stories of victory after a journey of constant prayer. There comes a time when perseverance bears fruit, and that's when testimonies begin to emerge. And there's nothing more powerful in fueling faith than hearing or experiencing a real answer to prayer. It's different from theory. It's different from rhetoric. Testimony is when someone can say, I lived this, I prayed, and God acted. And do you know why this is so important? Because testimonies create hope. When you hear that someone prayed Psalm 35 and saw traps being broken, injustices being exposed, and victories being won, something inside you awakens and says, if it happened to them, it can happen to me too. It's this flame of hope that keeps you from giving up when the struggle seems too long. Consider a concrete situation. Someone being persecuted at work, the target of gossip with people trying to destroy their reputation. Instead of fighting back, this person began praying Psalm 35 every day, asking God to fight for them. For weeks, it seemed like nothing was changing, but gradually the truth began to emerge. A scheming colleague was exposed, lies came to light, and the person who previously seemed hopeless was restored to their position. This is a real testimony, and it's precisely this kind of experience that renews hope in those still in the midst of battle. And perhaps you also have your own story, moments when you clearly realized it could only have been God, situations when everything was against you, but something unexpected happened and turned the tide. These moments are treasures of faith because they prove that God never fails and that His word lives on. And when you share or remember these experiences, you not only strengthen yourself, but also those around you. This is why testimony and hope go hand in hand. Those who bear witness release hope, and those who receive hope persevere until they can bear their own testimony. And look, it doesn't have to be a great miracle that stops the world. Sometimes testimony lies in small victories, a deliverance, a word of comfort, a door that opens at the right moment, a situation that seemed rigged against you but mysteriously came to nothing. All of this shows that God is at work. The problem is that we often get so used to complaining about our struggles that we forget to celebrate our deliverances. But when you learn to value each testimony, no matter how small, your faith is renewed, and you create a cycle of hope that sustains you until the greater victory arrives. So I want you to do something right now. Write the word here in the comments, hope. By writing this word, you're not just interacting. You're declaring that you believe God will still act, that your story of victory is on the way, and that soon you'll also have testimonies to share. This simple act can be the beginning of a new attitude toward your battles. And know this, when you begin to see prayer as a path to generating testimonies, you realize you're building something much greater than immediate results. You're creating spiritual memories, proof that God was present in every detail of your life. And this will be what sustains you in your future struggles, because you'll always remember, if He did it once, He can do it again. Now, you've realized how this message opened your eyes to spiritual battles and showed you that there is a concrete way to win, using prayer as a weapon and Psalm 35 as a shield. This content brought clarity, strengthened your faith, and gave you tools you can apply today to overcome traps and walk in victory. And just as it helped you, it can reach many others who are going through similar situations. This is where you can give back. By liking this video and subscribing to the channel, you are part of something bigger, allowing this message to reach those who also need this deliverance. And to seal everything you've learned here, comment now, divine protection, declaring that this truth is already active in your life. Stay tuned, because what comes next will take you even deeper into this path of spiritual victory, and may be exactly the answer you've been waiting for.